Every night, my son said he was working on his car in the garage. At 3 a.m., I heard a loud crash, and his voice whispering, "Don't let the old man find out." I hid and watched him load a heavy bag into his truck. When the bag opened, I froze when I saw what he had been hiding from me. Hit subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching this story from. What would you do if you discovered your own family was hiding something this big? I've always been a light sleeper. At 65, running Brennan Antiques in Charleston's historic district for 40 years teaches you to listen for trouble. But that November night, something woke me that had nothing to do with my usual concerns. The clock read 3:17 a.m. Our old Charleston single house was quiet except for familiar settling sounds. My wife, Margaret, had passed 3 years ago, leaving just Derek and me in this big place on King Street. Then I heard it. A muffled thud from the garage, followed by Derek's pickup starting up. My heart quickened. Derek, 35, and working at the Charleston Heritage Museum, had always been responsible. 3 a.m. truck runs weren't his style. I slipped to the bedroom window facing the side yard. What I saw sent a chill down my spine. Derek was moving between the garage and his Ford F-150, carrying a heavy canvas bag, the kind we used at my shop for transporting delicate pieces. He moved carefully, like someone avoiding detection. The garage light cast shadows across the driveway. Derek's face looked strained as he hefted the bag into the truck bed. For a moment, the canvas gaped open. Even from my second-floor window, I could see the unmistakable gleam of silver, genuine antique pieces. There was an ornate picture frame, definitely 18th century from the gilding. My trained eye caught colonial-era silver that made collectors' hearts race. But here's what made my stomach drop. Some pieces looked familiar. That silver tea service, wasn't that the Revere reproduction from my shop's display case? And that frame looked exactly like one from my back room. Derek made 2 more trips carrying bags and wrapped bundles. With each load, my confusion deepened. If these were from my shop, why sneak them out at 3 a.m.? More troubling, there were items I didn't recognize. Valuable pieces that looked like they belonged in a museum. A museum like the Charleston Heritage Museum where my son worked? Derek closed the tailgate and stood looking back at the house. I stepped away from the window instinctively. When I looked again, he was driving away. The headlights disappeared down King Street. I stood there 10 more minutes, mind racing through disturbing possibilities. Derek had keys to my shop, knew the security codes, had my complete trust. But he also had access to the museum's collection, pieces worth hundreds of thousands. I returned to bed but couldn't sleep. When his truck returned an hour later, I listened to careful footsteps on the stairs, his bedroom door closing softly. My son, who'd never taken a candy bar without permission, had just loaded what looked like stolen antiques into his truck. Derek had always been my pride and joy. Now I was watching him do something that could destroy everything we'd built. The morning couldn't come fast enough. I had to find out what was happening. The morning couldn't come fast enough, and by 8 a.m., I was already downstairs unlocking Brennan Antiques. The familiar smell of old wood polish and aged leather usually brought me comfort, but today everything felt different. I walked straight to the back room where I kept my most valuable pieces. My hands shook as I pulled out my inventory ledger, the same leather-bound book I'd used for 20 years. 4 pieces were missing. The Revere reproduction tea service, gone. An 18th century mahogany picture frame I'd been saving for the right buyer, gone. A set of colonial silver candlesticks that had been in my family for generations, gone. And most troubling, a pewter bowl that belonged to Margaret's grandmother, irreplaceable and definitely not for sale. I stared at the empty spaces, trying to make sense of what I'd witnessed in the darkness. Derek had access to everything, knew where I kept keys, understood every piece's value. But why would he take them? The front door chimed at exactly 9 a.m. Derek's punctuality had always been admirable, until today when it felt almost mocking. "Morning, Dad." His voice sounded strained. "You're here early." I turned slowly, studying my son's face. Dark circles, fidgeting hands, avoiding eye contact. This wasn't the Derek I'd raised. "We need to talk about last night." Derek's coffee cup paused halfway to his lips. "Last night, 3:17 a.m. I saw you loading bags from our garage." I stepped closer. "Derek, where are my antiques?" His face went pale, then flushed. "Dad, I can explain." "Then explain. I'm missing 4 valuable pieces, and you're the only other person with access." Derek set down his coffee and ran both hands through his hair, a nervous habit since childhood. "It's not what you think. I wasn't stealing." "Then what?" I was moving them somewhere safe, for a museum project. The words rushed out rehearsed. Charleston Heritage Museum is working on a security initiative. We're temporarily relocating high-value pieces from private collections to protect them from a suspected theft ring. I stared at him. A theft ring? 3 antique shops have been hit this month. Professional jobs. The museum offered secure storage until police catch whoever's doing it. It sounded plausible, almost. But something in Derek's voice made my stomach churn. Why didn't you tell me? Why sneak around at 3 a.m.? I didn't want to worry you. The museum said discretion was crucial. Fewer people knowing about relocations, the better. The front door chimed again. Derek, are you here? Kira Blake stepped inside, and even after 2 years of marriage to my son, she still commanded attention. Tall, elegant auburn hair catching morning light through the windows. Oh, Gordon. She smiled warmly, kissing my cheek. I didn't expect you here so early. Inventory check, I said carefully. Kira glanced between us, smile faltering. Is everything all right? Dad saw me loading the antiques last night, Derek said quietly. Kira's expression shifted to understanding, then relief. Thank goodness Derek's been worried about keeping the museum project secret. I told him he should have explained everything from the beginning. She turned to me, green eyes earnest. Gordon Derek is doing something wonderful. Charleston Heritage Museum identified a sophisticated theft ring, targeting collectors and dealers. They're offering secure storage until criminals are caught. The museum insisted on discretion. She continued, squeezing my arm gently. Police think the thieves have inside information, someone who knows which shops have valuable inventory. I looked between them. Derek nodded earnestly. Your pieces are safer there, Dad. State-of-the-art security, climate control, everything. Kira smiled again. Derek was planning to tell you today anyway. The storage period is almost over. I wanted to believe them. Paternal instinct said trust my son. But something nagged at me, some detail that didn't fit. When do I get them back? Soon, Derek said. Very soon? I nodded slowly, letting their explanations settle over my doubts. Maybe 40 years in antiques had made me too suspicious. Maybe I was being paranoid, but 2 hours later my world would collapse completely. 2 hours later my world collapsed completely. 3 sharp knocks echoed through Brennan Antiques. Through the window I saw a Charleston police cruiser already drawing stares from King Street tourists. Charleston Police, we need Derek Brennan. The lead officer, stern-faced and 40-ish, held up an official document. We have a warrant to search these premises and vehicles registered to Derek Brennan. We're investigating theft from Charleston Heritage Museum. The words hit like a physical blow. There must be some mistake. Is that Derek Brennan's Ford F-150 Outback? I nodded numbly, thinking of those bags I'd watched him load 8 hours earlier. Officers moved through my shop with practiced efficiency, photographing everything, checking serial numbers. Customers slipped out quietly. My life's work had become a crime scene. Derek arrived as they finished searching his truck. Dad, what's... He stopped, seeing the police cars, the gathering crowd. Derek Brennan, you're under arrest for theft of cultural property. What? No, there's been a mistake. But there hadn't been. In Derek's truck, wrapped in museum cloth, they found 6 Charleston Heritage Museum pieces. 18th century silver colonial paintings, artifacts worth hundreds of thousands. Mixed with them were my 4 missing antiques. Derek, how is this possible? I watched them read his rights. Dad, I can explain. His voice cracked. This isn't what it looks like. Kira arrived as they handcuffed Derek, running frantically in heels, pushing through gawkers. Derek, oh my God, what's happening? When she saw the handcuffs, she sobbed. Completely genuine sounding. Officers, please, there's been a terrible mistake. Ma'am, step back. Derek talked to me. Derek looked at his wife with pure anguish. Kira, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sorry for what you're scaring me. The performance was flawless. Kira clutched Derek's arm as they led him away, tears streaming, voice breaking with apparent confusion and terror. Gordon, do something, call a lawyer. I stood frozen, watching my son loaded into a police car like a common criminal. Phones came out recording the spectacle. 40 years building my reputation, and now this. We'll need you at the station for questioning Mr. Brennan, the officer told me. The police cars pulled away with Derek. The crowd dispersed, already spreading news through Charleston's tight-knit district. By evening, everyone would know Derek Brennan had been arrested for theft. Kira stood on the sidewalk watching the cars disappear, shoulders shaking with sobs. I was about to comfort her when she turned around. For just 2 seconds, when she thought no one was looking, I saw her face. The tears remained, but her eyes were completely cold, calculating. No grief, no shock, no confusion. Only satisfaction. She caught me staring and immediately shifted back to devastated wife, but I'd seen enough. That night I couldn't sleep. Something was very wrong about Kira. The next morning I made a decision that would change everything. Instead of wallowing in shock, I was going to find out the truth about my daughter-in-law. I'd spent 40 years building relationships in Charleston's antique community. Time to use them. My first call was to Margaret Wells at Palmetto Antiques. We'd traded pieces and information since the 70s. Margaret, it's Gordon. Have you ever heard anything about Kira, my daughter-in-law? A pause. Kira Blake. The redhead can't say I have. Why, just curious about her background. She's been family for 2 years, but I don't know much about her past. 3 more calls to dealers yielded nothing. Kira had never been involved in Charleston's antique scene before marrying Derek. For someone married to a museum curator and living with an antique dealer, that seemed odd. Next, I turned to social media. Kira's profiles were perfectly curated. Beautiful photos of her and Derek at restaurants, galleries, museum events. But scrolling back through 2.5 years of posts, something struck me. There was nothing before Derek. No college friends, no family photos, no history. Her social media began exactly when she started dating my son. I pulled out Derek's photo albums. There. Their first date inscription, Kira and me at Magnolia Plantation, September 15th, 2.5 years ago. I checked Derek's employment records. He'd started at Charleston Heritage Museum September 1st, 2.5 years ago. 2 weeks. Kira met Derek just 2 weeks after he started his museum job. Coincidence. My 40 years in business had taught me to be suspicious of coincidences involving valuable objects and attractive women. I needed more information, and I knew who to ask. Mrs. Dorothy Ashford lived next door, a sprightly 80-year-old who'd been watching the neighborhood since the Eisenhower administration. I found her deadheading roses with surgical precision. Dorothy, have you noticed anything unusual about Kira lately? Her eyes sharpened. Funny you should ask. I've been wondering about that girl for months. What do you mean? She's been having meetings at that cafe on Meeting Street with outdoor tables. I walk past there for my library book club. Meetings with whom? Men. Always different but similar. Expensive suits, fancy watches, polished appearance. Not tourists, though. My pulse quickened. How do you know? Tourists don't have serious business conversations. These were intense. Leaning in close, taking notes, exchanging envelopes. Envelopes. Small ones. Cash or documents, maybe. Dorothy snipped another rose. She always looked around nervously, checking if anyone was watching. How long? At least 6 months, I noticed, because she dressed up for coffee dates, but told Derek she was running errands or meeting girlfriends. My mouth went dry. She lied. Constantly. Once I heard her tell Derek she was grocery shopping, but I'd just seen her walking back from Meeting Street without bags. Dorothy fixed me with a steady gaze. Gordon, something about that girl never sat right. She's too perfect, too charming. People who work that hard to be likable are usually hiding something. I thanked Dorothy and walked home mind racing. Secret meetings with strangers. Lies about whereabouts. Social media history beginning exactly when she met Derek. I needed to know who Kira Blake really was. I needed professional help, and I knew exactly who to call. Kenneth Walsh had been a Charleston police detective for 25 years before starting his private investigation firm. We'd met when he'd helped me track stolen Civil War memorabilia. If anyone could uncover the truth about Kira Blake, it was Kenneth. His office was in a converted Calhoun Street house, all hardwood floors and lazy ceiling fans. Gordon, good to see you, though. I'm sorry about the circumstances. Kenneth was lean 50-ish, with the steady gaze of someone who'd spent years reading lies. Tell me what you need. I explained everything. Derek's arrest, the mysterious antiques, Kira's explanations, Mrs. Dorothy's observations about secret meetings. Kenneth took notes, asking occasional questions. When I finished, he leaned back. You think the wife's involved? I think she's not who she claims to be. Give me 48 hours. Kenneth called the next afternoon, voice grim. Gordon, you need to come in. What I found is bigger than expected. An hour later, I sat across from Kenneth as he spread photographs and documents across his desk like murder trial evidence. Kira Blake doesn't exist, he said without preamble. At least not the version your son married. My heart sank. What do you mean? The woman in your house is Kira Summers, criminal record in Florida, fraud identity theft conspiracy, served 18 months federal prison 3 years ago. Kenneth slid a mugshot across the desk. Definitely Kira, but harder, with shorter hair, and those cold eyes I'd glimpsed after Derek's arrest. Federal prison, art theft ring, High-end stuff, paintings, sculptures, antiques. They'd target wealthy collectors, auction houses working months to set up single jobs. The room spun. And she married my son? Gets worse. Kenneth pulled out another file. Her ring's still active. International operation moving stolen art through dealer networks. FBI's been tracking them for years. She's still involved? She married Derek specifically for access to Charleston's art scene. Your shop, his museum. Perfect cover. Legitimate access to valuables, insider security knowledge, respectable husband above suspicion. I stared at the mugshot, remembering how she'd charmed me from day one. Always interested in my inventory, asking about provenance and values. Encouraging Derek's museum career, praising his expertise. 2.5 years of setup, I said quietly. Serious commitment to a con. Kenneth leaned forward. Those men Mrs. Ashford saw Kira meeting, I showed her photos of known associates. She identified too. My blood chilled. They're here. Months now. Setting up operations, identifying targets. Kenneth's expression darkened. Your son isn't criminal, Gordon. He's a patsy. Kira manipulated him from day one, moving pieces, accessing restricted areas, providing information. When arrest came, guess who'd be holding evidence? The betrayal's scope hit like a physical blow. Derek's confusion during arrest, desperate apologies, genuine shock at finding stolen goods. All real. She framed him. Classic misdirection. While everyone focuses on the corrupt museum, curator real criminals disappear with millions in stolen art. Derek was sitting in jail, probably still trying to understand how his life collapsed. My son, who'd never cheated on a test, facing federal charges because he'd loved the wrong woman. What do we do? Kenneth gathered files. Normally I'd say local police, but Kira's people are sophisticated. They've covered tracks well. Local cops might lack resources for international art theft operations. Then what? Federal help, FBI art crime team specifically. They've hunted this network for years. Kenneth met my eyes. But once you make that call, there's no going back. This becomes federal investigation, and everyone, including Derek, becomes part of it. I stood slowly, feeling every one of my 65 years. Derek needed help, but I needed power greater than anything I could provide. My son needed saving, and I was going to save him. The FBI field office in Charleston was all concrete and bulletproof glass designed to intimidate. I'd never imagined walking through those doors voluntarily carrying evidence about my own daughter-in-law. Security was thorough. Metal detectors guards who looked like they could bench press trucks. After explaining my purpose, I waited 40 minutes before Agent Elowen Porter appeared. Early 40s, sharp blue eyes, prematurely gray hair in a no-nonsense ponytail. Her handshake was firm manner, all business. Mr. Brennan, you have information about art theft operations. My daughter-in-law is part of an international smuggling ring, and my son's in jail for her crimes. Agent Porter's expression didn't change, but I caught interest flickering. Let's talk privately. Her office was spartanly furnished. Government desk computer walls covered with photographs of stolen artwork. Paintings, sculptures, antiques, all stamped, recovered, or missing in red. I spread Kenneth Walsh's files across her desk, explaining everything from Derek's midnight runs, to Kira's secret meetings, to her suspicious timing in our lives. Agent Porter studied each document, making occasional notes. When I finished, she leaned back. Mr. Brennan, you've just handed me our biggest break in 3 years. You know Kira. Kira Summers has been on our watch list since prison release. What we didn't know was her location or operational status. She pulled out a thick file. She's key player in the collector network. International art theft and smuggling operation. My stomach dropped. International, over 50 million stolen across 6 countries. Museum heists, private collections, auction cons. Sophisticated patient, extremely dangerous. Dangerous how Agent Porter's expression darkened. 2 potential witnesses died in apparent accidents. Miami gallery owner, Atlanta collector. We suspect murder. The room felt cold. This woman's been living in my house 2 years, using your son as unwitting accomplice while planning their next operation. Charleston's art scene is worth millions. Perfect target. Can you help Derek? If you help us. We need evidence of active conspiracy. Recorded confessions, operational documentation, network proof. Help. You become our inside man. Kira doesn't know we've identified her. You're just Derek's confused father, probably desperate for answers. My mouth went dry. You want me to approach her? Offer to help her. Say you've figured out Derek's activities, understand the antique business could be valuable to her operation. She'll never believe that. You're 65 widowed watching your son face federal charges. Could be a man who's lost everything willing to do anything for his boy, or realize there's money in gray markets. Agent Porter produced a recording device button-sized. We'll wire you position backup teams. Get her talking about plans, associates, operations. If she suspects so, that's why we'll have backup close. Matter-of-fact tone carried underlying warning. Mr. Brennan, I won't lie. This is dangerous. These people kill to protect operations. I thought about Derek in jail, wondering how his father could believe him criminal. About Kira's cold eyes when unguarded. About 40 years building honest business destroyed by lies. What do I do? Agent Porter smiled for the first time. Convince Kira Blake you want to join her team. Make her believe you'll betray everything you've stood for to save your son. She handed me her direct number. Can you do that? I pocketed the card and stood. Agent Porter, I've spent 40 years reading people in antiques. I know when someone's selling me fakes. And now it's my turn to be the seller. That evening I prepared for the most dangerous meeting of my life. At 9 p.m. I made the call that would either save my son or get me killed. Kira, it's Gordon. I need to see you tonight, at the shop. A pause. Gordon, it's late. Can't this wait? It's about Derek, about what he was really doing. I let desperation creep into my voice. I know Kira. I know everything. Longer pause. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I checked Agent Porter's recording device. Button-sized, invisible ones attached. FBI teams were positioned around King Street, but felt miles away as I waited in my darkened shop. Kira arrived exactly on time, heels clicking before she knocked. Perfect as always. Elegant coat-styled hair, concerned expression. Gordon, you sounded upset. What's this about? I locked the door and gestured toward the back office. We need privacy. She followed, but I noticed her eyes scanning sightlines, exit routes, professional habits. Oh, sit down. I settled behind my desk, projecting broken old man. I've been thinking since Derek's arrest. We all have. It's been horrible. Has it or exactly what you planned? Something shifted in her posture. I don't know what you mean. I think you do. 2.5 years of planning. Meeting Derek 2 weeks after he started the museum job. Her mask slipped slightly. Gordon, you're not thinking clearly. More clearly than in months. I pulled out Kenneth Walsh's file. Kira Summers, federal prison, art theft conspiracy. She went still. Only the old building's settling sounds remained. How did you... Does it matter? Question is what now? Kira calculated, weighing options. What do you want? My son out of jail, and compensation for being played. Compensation. You used my shop connections reputation. Derek's going to prison for your crimes. Cut me in on profits. She laughed like breaking glass. You think you can blackmail me? I think we can help each other. You need legitimate access to Charleston's market. Someone who knows collectors' weak auction house security. I leaned back. I need money for Derek's defense. Kira studied me, then slowly smiled. I always suspected you were smarter than you seemed. Smart enough to know when I'm beat. Derek's finished. I don't have to be. What exactly are you proposing? Partnership. Tell me what you're really after, I help you get it. You make Derek's charges disappear, give me percentage. Kira pulled out her phone, sent a quick text. Derek's charges can't disappear, but they can be redirected. Redirected how? Made to look like he was coerced by someone else. Her smile turned predatory. Someone like you. Desperate father who forced his son to steal from his employer. My blood chilled. That wasn't the plan, but it's what's happening. Unless you'd prefer Derek's federal prison cell. She leaned forward, voice dropping to intimate whisper. You want to know the beautiful part? Gordon Derek never suspected a thing. I spent 2 years making him fall so deeply in love, he'd do anything I asked. Move inventory after hours for security reasons. Access restricted museum areas for special projects. He was so eager to impress me. You manipulated him. I destroyed him. Pure satisfaction in her voice. And when the time came, I made one anonymous call to police about suspicious activity at Brennan Antiques. Derek was so confused when they found stolen goods in his truck. Kept saying he was just helping his wife with museum business. Outside car doors slammed, multiple vehicles. Kira's smile widened. Did you really think I didn't know you'd try something? 3 large men in expensive suits walked through my door without knocking. Gentlemen, Kira said pleasantly, meet Derek's father. He's been asking too many questions. The largest cracked his knuckles. Should we take him somewhere private? Kira looked at me with those cold eyes. No need. Your son is in jail, Gordon. No one left to protect you. She stood slowly savoring the moment. Time to send you on your way. I'd heard everything needed to save Derek, but might not live to use it. Kira nodded to the largest man. Make it quick and clean. He reached inside his jacket, and I saw the metallic glint of a gun barrel. This was it. I was about to die in my own shop, surrounded by 40 years of carefully collected antiques. I did the only thing I could think of. I ran. Overturning my desk chair, I bolted toward the front of the shop, weaving between display cases and furniture. Behind me, I heard Kira curse, and the heavy footsteps of her enforcers giving chase. Don't let him reach the street, she shouted. The second gunman appeared at the front door, blocking my escape route. His weapon was already drawn, pointed directly at my chest. End of the line, old man. I was trapped between armed killers in my own store, with nowhere left to run. The recording device felt like a lead weight against my chest. All that evidence, all that proof of Derek's innocence about to die with me. Then the front windows exploded inward. FBI, drop your weapons. Agent Eloan Porter came through the shattered glass like an avenging angel service weapon, drawn backup agents flooding in behind her. Simultaneously, the back door burst open as more federal agents swarmed the shop. Federal agents, get on the ground now. The gunman at the front door spun toward the new threat, and I dove behind a Civil War-era armoire as the shooting started. It was over in seconds. Professional law enforcement against street criminals. There was no contest. The sharp crack of gunfire, shouted commands, the crash of overturning furniture, then sudden ringing silence. Clear front, clear back. Suspects down. I peered around the armoire to see two of Kira's men on the ground hands, zip-tied behind their backs. The third was being treated by a paramedic for what looked like a shoulder wound. Kira herself was pressed against the back wall, Agent Porter's gun trained on her center mass. Kira Summers, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, art theft, racketeering, and about 15 other federal charges. I'm going to enjoy reading to you. You can't prove anything, Kira snarled, but her composure had finally cracked completely. Gone was the elegant Charleston socialite. This was the federal prisoner, the career criminal, the predator who destroyed my son's life for profit. Actually, we can, Agent Porter smiled grimly. Mr. Brennan's recording device picked up your entire confession, including the part where you admitted to framing Derek and ordering his father's murder. Kira's face went white as the handcuffs clicked shut. Kira Summers, Agent Porter continued, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a federal court of law. As they led her away, Kira caught my eye one last time. The mask was completely gone now, just cold hatred and the fury of a predator whose long game had finally been exposed. This isn't over, she hissed. Yes, it is, I replied quietly. Agent Porter approached me as the crime scene team began processing my destroyed shop. Mr. Brennan, are you injured? I shook my head, still trying to process what had just happened. The recording. Did you get everything? Every word. Confession to art theft, conspiracy, manipulation of Derek ordering your murder. It's all there. She holstered her weapon. We've been trying to get evidence like this on the Collector Network for 3 years. What you did tonight will put them away for decades. And Derek? Agent Porter's expression softened. Derek will be released tomorrow morning. All charges dropped. The recording makes it clear he was an unwitting victim of an elaborate con game. Relief flooded through me so powerfully I had to sit down on a nearby chair. He's really free. He's really free. Mr. Brennan, your son, is going to need time to process what happened to him. 2.5 years of psychological manipulation doesn't heal overnight. But he's alive, he's innocent, and he's going home. I looked around my shop. Windows, shattered furniture, overturned police tape everywhere. It would take months to repair the damage. But Derek was coming home. Agent Porter, thank you for everything. Thank you, Mr. Brennan. What you did tonight took real courage. 3 days later, I stood waiting at the gates of Charleston County Jail, watching for my son to walk free. 3 days later, I stood at Charleston County Jail gates, watching the most important door in my world swing open. Derek emerged blinking in November sunlight, wearing clothes from his arrest 4 days earlier. 4 days that felt like years. He looked older, worn by an experience no innocent man should endure. When he saw me, his face crumpled. Dad, I'm so sorry. I pulled my son into a hug 40 years of fatherhood had built toward. You have nothing to apologize for. I believed her, trusted her, let her use me to hurt you, the shop, everything we built. Derek, you fell in love. That's not a crime. We drove home in comfortable silence. Derek stared at Charleston streets like seeing them for the first time. Tell me how she did it, I said finally. Derek was quiet then, started small. She'd ask about museum work, seem interested in collection security, said she wanted to understand my passion. You wanted to impress her? This beautiful woman was interested in me, my work. She'd suggest I photograph pieces for her research check items after hours, always with reasonable explanations. When did it escalate? 6 months ago. Said the museum was concerned about theft rings. Asked me to temporarily move high-value pieces to secure locations, including your shop, until better security was installed. And you believed her. She had documentation, Dad. Official papers calls with supposed board members. She'd created entire false reality around me. His voice broke. I thought I was protecting art. Instead, I was stealing it. You were protecting what you loved. She used that against you. We pulled into our driveway. Derek stared at the house where Kira had lived and lied 2 years. How did you know see through her when I couldn't? Experience? 40 years dealing with con artists, thieves who thought they could fool the old antique dealer. I turned off the engine, but mostly I knew my son. You weren't capable of what they accused you of. I feel like such a fool. You learned an expensive lesson about trust. Question is, what now? Derek looked at me hopefully. What do you mean? The shop needs rebuilding. Windows replaced, inventory, reorganized, reputation restored. I could use a partner who understands both antiques and museums. You'd want me to work with you after everything. Derek, you're my son. More than that, you're a good man who trusted the wrong woman. If I can't forgive that, what kind of father am I? That evening we planned. Derek would continue at Charleston Heritage Museum. They'd offered his job back with apologies. But evenings and weekends he'd help rebuild Brennan Antiques. We'll make it stronger than before, Derek said, sketching security improvements. We'll make it honest, I corrected. That's all it needs to be. A month later, Brennan Antiques reopened with new windows, better security, and a sign reading, Father and Son Est, 1984. Business was better than ever. Surviving international art theft conspiracy was good publicity. Derek was healing slowly, but surely. The museum promoted him to senior curator, and I'd learned 65 wasn't too old to be a hero when family needed saving. How do you trust again after something like this? Derek had asked. Carefully, thoughtfully. But you do trust because the alternative is living in fear. And you remember that wisdom comes from surviving times when trust was misplaced. Sometimes the greatest antiques aren't objects. Their wisdom passed through generations' bonds, holding families together. Knowledge that love and experience can overcome even elaborate deceptions. Looking back at my story, I realize how close I came to losing everything. Don't be like me. Don't wait until disaster strikes to truly see the people around you. I spent 2.5 years living with a criminal thinking I knew my family. The lesson I learned is simple: trust your instincts, especially when something feels too perfect. God gave us intuition for a reason, and I ignored mine for too long. When that beautiful woman swept into Derek's life with perfect timing, I should have asked harder questions. Grandpa stories like mine teach us that experience matters. Those gut feelings aren't paranoia, they're wisdom. This true story changed how I see family relationships. I realized that protecting someone sometimes means having difficult conversations. God blessed me with 65 years of experience, but I was afraid to use it because I didn't want to seem like an interfering old man. Don't make my mistake. When you sense deception, investigate. When someone tries to isolate your loved ones, speak up. God puts people in our lives to watch out for each other, and sometimes being the suspicious old grandpa is exactly what your family needs. Grandpa stories remind us that age brings perspective, not irrelevance. True story experiences teach us that love sometimes means being the one everyone thinks is wrong, until you're proven right. Grandpa stories show us that wisdom comes from surviving life's hardest lessons. This true story proved that family bonds can survive even the most elaborate deceptions. What would you have done in my situation? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your engagement helps us bring more meaningful stories to families everywhere.